Hey guys, Gareth here and welcome back to the channel. You know, if you were to look at your spending every month, food will probably be in the top 3 biggest expenses after housing and maybe transportation. So there's a real opportunity to accelerate your journey to financial freedom. Because if you can save and cut down a bit on how much you spend on food, you can really take this money and put it towards something else like saving and investing. And I don't know about you guys, but I really love it when people share tips and hacks that are really practical for you to apply in your everyday life. And that's what I'm going to do in today's video. I've learned some really great tips in the past of ways to reduce how much you spend on food while still getting a well-balanced diet and the odd treat every now and then. So stay tuned for my top 10 tips on ways to save money on how much you spend on food every month. I'm sure you're going to find them useful. Alright guys, so as a bit of a foodie and somebody that has a sweet tooth, I sometimes find it really difficult to stay disciplined with how much I spend on food. And it can be a bit of a challenge, and I'm sure I'm not alone with this one. So here are some of the tips that I've learned of ways that you can save money on your food bill. Alright guys, so the first tip is being mindful of ordering in. Now I know this is a big one. I mean, over the last year or so with lockdowns around the world, and being cooped up at home, ordering or food delivery online has just been more convenient than ever. But if you don't keep track, then these can add up really fast. I mean, aside from paying for just the food that you're eating, you're probably going to be paying for a service fee and a delivery fee. And you know, we always tip the delivery person because we want to support them as well. And these costs just add up really quickly. And it ends up being way more expensive than if you just prepared a meal at home, right? Now, something that I've noticed when using different food delivery apps is that, you know, even if you're looking at the same restaurant, depending on the app you use, the menu prices can be different and the delivery and service charges can be different. And another thing that I tested again this morning is where you can use the same restaurant on the same app, but looking at different locations of that restaurant, like maybe one neighborhood to a different one, you'll see different prices for the very same order. So just by doing a quick comparison on different apps for your order can actually end up saving you some money. Now, tip number 2 is avoid splitting it. Now, this is not the most convenient one, and it can be pretty awkward if you have to point it out. And I've been in this position many times before. So let's say you go out with a bunch of people and, you know, some people are ordering really fancy starters, having a big lavish main course and then a nice dessert, having a bunch of drinks, you know, so obviously their order is much more significant, and then you just go out and you have a simple main course. But then when the bill comes, they say, okay guys, well, we're 5 people, so we just take the total and we divide it by 5. But the thing is that you're actually subsidizing a huge chunk of their orders and paying way more than what you would ordinarily. So it's not exactly helping you save, right? Now, of course, there is some room for flexibility here. It doesn't have to be down to the exact cent, you know, it doesn't have to be precise. But if there's large differences between the cost of everybody's orders, then maybe this is something to keep in mind. I don't know if any of you guys are fans of the show called Friends, right? And there's this one episode where the 6 of them, they go out to a restaurant and 3 of them are on a bit of a tight budget and the other 3 are not. And so exactly the situation happens where the 3 that are not on a tight budget, they order all kinds of things, the most expensive things. And the 3 that are a bit more cost conscious really are ordering the most basic things that they can to try and keep their cost down. And then when the bill comes, the suggestion is to split the bill. And at that point, Phoebe just completely freaks out because she's not having it because she's one of those on a tight budget. So I think this is probably quite a relatable and common scenario that a lot of people find themselves in. So tip number 3 is packing lunch. You know, this is another great way to save money on your food when you're going to work or university. And it's something that I've been doing for years, especially when I first started working and I wasn't earning much and the budget was a bit tight. This was really helpful. I would just pre-pack my lunch, and this way I made sure that I had a healthy meal in and at an affordable price, as opposed to going out and ordering food every day. And there's been a bunch of studies done on this, right, to kind of confirm whether it's better to pre-pack a lunch or to go out and buy lunch every day. And according to USA Today, the average American spends around $11 a day if they were to go out and buy lunch, compared to $6.30 if they prepared a meal at home. Now, of course, your country, your region, your area might be different. So by bringing lunch from home, you can probably save around 43% on your lunch every single day. So tip number 4 is sticking to the list. Guys, writing out a shopping list beforehand can be a really great way to just sticking to what you actually need and not kind of veering off the list and buying unnecessary things. I just use the Notes app or Evernote on my iPhone to do this. And then I stick to the list as strictly as possible and don't deviate. And when we start deviating from that list, we end up buying things we don't really need, which may be a bit of a waste of money. And usually those things that we do end up adding are also more like treats and snacks and nice to haves, cookies and chocolates, right? So not the best to the waistline either. So sticking to the list will help you not only avoid buying things that you don't need, but also avoid buying things that are not necessarily healthy. So it's a double win. So I've got quite a few more tips to come, but just a quick reminder to please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps me grow the channel and produce content for you guys that brings as much value as possible. Also, just hit the notification bell right next to the subscribe button. That way you get an alert whenever I upload a new video. Alright guys, so tip number 5 is to eat before you go grocery shopping. And I can tell you, when I'm starving, everything looks good. Even vegetables that I normally don't like eating, I would eat anything. And it's so much harder to say no to the temptations. But if you eat before you go shopping, well, a lot of the things seem less appetizing because you're already full. And that way it's easier to say no to them and just stick to your list. I mean, just think back a few months ago to when it was maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas and you had a huge Christmas lunch and you're so stuffed and so full. I mean, the last thing you want is more food. So it's kind of applying a bit of that principle of being full and satisfied before going grocery shopping because you're not as interested in buying more things. Now, for the technical folks, this is something called diminishing marginal benefit. But basically it means that, the first bite, it's so delicious, you're so hungry and it brings you a lot of benefit. But with each bite, as you become more full and satisfied, the benefit starts coming less and less until eventually you're so stuffed, the last thing you want is more food. And guys, there have been a bunch of studies done on this, right? And they found that people that have been short-term food deprived of maybe a few hours before they go shopping end up buying more food, especially high in calorie foods like candy and salty cracks. Another study found that people who were hungry ended up buying more food when they went grocery shopping as opposed to that same person buying food when they'd just eaten. Tip number 6 is avoiding peak times. Now I know this one seems a little bit strange because how would avoiding peak times help you to save money on your food bill? Well, if you go during peak times and you're waiting to pay, the line for the cashier is going to be much longer, right? Have you ever noticed all of those really nice and tempting chocolates and candy are lined up leading up to the cashier? That's not a coincidence. That's put there very much for a reason. And the longer you're waiting in line, the more tempted you may be to just add 1 or 2 chocolates and treats on your way to the cashier. But if you go when it's super quiet and it's not busy, you can just go right past those and get straight to the cashier and pay. Out of sight, out of mind. Alright guys, so tip number 7 is buying no name or house brands. So, I mean, this one is quite obvious and I'm sure that many of you are already doing it in any case, but it's still a great way to save money. You can usually get a decent quality product for way less than a fancy expensive brand. Now, of course, it depends on what you're buying, right? Because sometimes the quality can be lower, but it really depends on what you're buying. And so there is really an opportunity to find something that's similar in quality, but way cheaper. Buying something that's more expensive is not necessarily always better. Alright guys, so tip number 8 is drinks. Remember, a restaurant makes a huge chunk of their profit from selling drinks because they have a big markup on them. I'm sure you would have noticed before that, ordering just a glass of wine in a restaurant costs more than buying an entire bottle of wine if you went out to the store for exactly the same thing. So when you're dining out, try and avoid going to town on the drinks, right? Because it really adds up quite quickly. In university, I remember a lot of people would go and buy drinks from a local store and then they'll get together and have drinks together before they go out for the night. And often when you're having some drinks, it tends to be more than just one. So just keep this one in mind. So tip number 9 is to leave the kiddos at home. Now, maybe I'm not in the right position to be able to comment on this one because our baby is due any day now. So maybe I don't have enough experience on this one yet. But I'm thinking back to when I was small and we used to go shopping with my mom for groceries. And in particular, my one sibling, who I won't mention, was one of those that would just cause a massive scene in the shopping center. Just go completely nuts because they wanted a chocolate or a treat or a toy, you know, a cereal that has a toy inside of it. So they really want that cereal and they'll make a huge fuss just to get it. Now, some parents may just give in and buy them the toy or the chocolate or whatever it may be. And honestly, I don't know what I would do in that situation because it's a bit of a catch-22. It's really difficult to deal with. So if you have any tips for me on this, please let me know down in the comment section. I think it'll really help me a lot. But by leaving the kids at home, maybe you can avoid that scenario and not have to add those items to your shopping cart. And tip number 10, our final tip, is sharing is caring. Now, unless you're like Joey from Friends who doesn't share his food, sharing, for example, a dessert when you're going out for dinner with a friend or a partner could be a great option. Now, I know that for those of us with a sweet tooth, sharing a dessert sounds completely nuts. But I still think this can be a really good option because you get to taste that dessert and enjoy it, but you only have to pay for it once between the two of you because you get to share it. And your waistline might be quite happy with you too. My wife and I do this all the time. So guys, are there any other tips that you've picked up over time that have helped you save money on your food? Let me know down in the comment section, I'd love to know. And that's it for the video today, guys. I hope you found it useful and interesting. And if you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Also, share this video with others that would find it interesting as well. You can also follow me on Instagram. Here is my handle, and I'll see you next time.